guys, it's Lynn Pratt. Thanks so much for joining me to paint this skull. Now notice we are painting on black watercolor paper. So the black paper is Stonehenge Aqua Hotpress black paper. My light is shining on it so it doesn't look true black, but it is a super dark black paper, and it's made for watercolor. And on it, I am going to be using Holbein's Gouache. So gouache is an opaque watercolor paint. So I have my colors out on my palette, and I have my permanent white, my yellow ochre, my burnt sienna, my burnt umber. This one is turquoise blue and black. So those will be the colors that I'll be using today to create this painting of a skull on the black paper. So basically with watercolor on black, you're doing the opposite. Instead of building up layers of dark, you're building up layers of your lights. So you're basically working in opposite because your paper's black instead of white and your paint is opaque instead of transparent. So you have to think about it a little bit differently, but it's basically the same techniques to put the paint onto the paper. I'm adding the gouache onto the black watercolor paper the same way that I would add watercolor onto regular white watercolor paper. You just mix the paint with water and add it on. But instead of layering and going from light and building up your darks, here you're doing the opposite. You're adding paint and then building up layer after layer to get your brightest whites. I'm adding all the different colors in by looking at the reference photo and just adding where they seem to go. Now, you want to just keep building up, sometimes letting the initial layer dry and adding more on top, and sometimes you can add it right wet into wet, just like you do with normal watercolor paint. For the edges of the paper, I did wet into wet washes. So wet the paper with water and just added some of my white gouache in and my other colors, and then tilted my paper up to get the drip effect. Thanks for joining me for this super quick skull tutorial with gouache on black paper. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's paint.